The next part of our agenda is going to be some short faculty presentations. I think that 18 years ago, I never would have imagined that we would have a full faculty base that we have here today. And because of the legislative budget request that was funded a few years ago, ONA was offered 3 of those positions. And over time, we've been able to fill those with just outstanding people. And today, we have a wonderful complement of faculty programs here. 4 of them you're going to visit during the tour after lunch. 3 of them you're going to meet this morning. We're going to start off with Dr. Raoul Boughton. Raoul is assistant professor in wildlife ecology and conservation and is the first faculty member focusing in the area of wildlife ecology and the impacts that grazing lands has on that important habitat for our state. This is something that the growers have been talking about for a long time. And finally, here at the Research Center, we have an active research and extension program addressing those needs. So with that, Raoul, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. And I need to say thank you again because like John says, I would not be here without the support of the Florida cattlemen and actually getting that LBR through. That fully funds my program. I want to start with a question to all of you. What's the population of the world right now? Does anybody know? 7 billion, 7.4 billion people in the world. What's it going to be in 2100? More. That's good. That's good. That's a really good answer. So some of the estimates are 11.4 billion. What does that mean to us? Pardon? Trouble. That's a good answer. So there's a lot of trouble. What it means is that we're putting a lot of pressure on our resources. We're putting a lot of pressure on our natural resources. And there are things that we have to trade off if we're going to continue to do that. Or we get better at producing them. And this is a big thing for the future. So I'm going to start with that and just think about that. 7.4 billion people. I'm Australian. I come from a country with 22 million people. It's the size of the US. And you have 320 million people. It's crowded here for me. It really is. But as humans, we have impacts. We change landscapes. Dr. Jack Payne talked about how much this landscape has changed even since 1941. We drained this landscape. We modified the landscape for agriculture in places. We've also changed it with fire and how we use fire. So we're modifiers. We are the best ecosystem engineers in the world. Humans are. We have huge impacts. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. So a couple of examples from our past. Who remembers DDT? Remember DDT? What was an iconic bird species of America that was impacted by DDT? The bald eagle. Okay, so it was a huge impact. That species went down to a few hundred breeding pair in the whole country. It's a great story. As humans, we did something about it. We stopped using DDT. We actually turned around and we put in a breeding program. A lot of those birds came from Florida. This place had the remaining bald eagles that supplemented the rest of the country. And that population has fully recovered to now we have 1,500 bald eagles in Florida. I mean, they're all over the place. They're off the endangered species list. Great story. There's another really good one from Florida. Do you remember alligators? Do you remember alligators being rare? So there actually was a time where people believed that alligators were rare, and their distribution had shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. We'd hunted them so much that they were really on the brink of extinction. And we turned around in many places and we said, let's stop hunting. So what's happened to alligators? And we've got a management plan, and they've actually come out and they're everywhere now to the point that there's some problems reoccurring, and we need to actually put that into our management plans. All right, so they're sort of good stories. How about a couple of bad stories? Who's seen an ivory-billed woodpecker? Here. Who knows what an ivory-billed woodpecker is? Okay. Do you remember what the large pileated woodpecker is? Very similar species. Used to live in Florida. That ivory-billed woodpecker is now extinct. Okay. Who knows what a whooping crane is? Who's eaten a whooping crane is another question out here. Come on. All right. There's a few of you. I know there is. So that's another species where we have less than 12 individuals in Florida now that migrate here. That species is probably gone. Very, very difficult to do anything when we only have a few numbers left. Okay, there's a couple of others. The Carolina parakeet, one of your only parrots in the US. It's gone. It's extinct. Did we cause it as a human race? We did. We've got to accept that. We did. Do we want any other species to go extinct? Yes or no? Come on. Panthers are okay here? Yeah, you want to keep them? Coyotes? Love bugs? Love bugs? All right. I have to ask. So and wildlife species have impacts, all right? They affect our lives from day to day. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But I'm getting to a point here, is that your ranchers and the ranchers in Florida provide not just beef, but a phenomenal natural resource. The ecosystem, and I'm going to use this word, ecosystem services are not just food production, they're conservation, they're protection for wildlife, their biodiversity, their groundwater recharge, their nutrient filtration. These huge landscapes are really important. I want to see them stay. So part of my job is to try and encourage them to actually stay. All right. So I'm not the only person who thinks this. There's been a shift. There's been a shift in federal government thinking. There's been a shift in private lands thinking. So there's more and more programs that are recognizing the importance of these really large landscapes. And there are programs out there to help support and actually try and maintain these landscapes. Can you name a few? Has anybody used any? Any programs? Some? Has anybody used a QUIP or WHIP? It used to be. Have any of you used, I hate acronyms, so I'll have to read them out. The Environmental Quality Enhancement Program is what EQUIP means. The Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, or it used to be called, part of that was the Grasslands Conservation Program. So these are easement programs that you could sign up for maybe 10 or 30 years in some cases, and maintain your landscape as it is, all right? So I'd love to see more people actually using some of these resources because they're not all used. The federal government assistance programs are sometimes sent back. We don't use all the money that is sometimes available in these programs. The really nice thing about this is that it's a program that's a partnership, and private lands people who have the land can partner to actually get money to do work that's helpful for them and it's helpful for wildlife. And that's why I want to encourage it, is the programs that are especially helpful for wildlife I'd like to see happen. There's a couple that I'd like to make a special mention of. So the US Fish and Wildlife Service had a policy for a long, long time that they didn't do easements on private lands. They had to own the land. That's only changed in the last 10 years. So now they're saying, okay, we don't need to own the land to management. We need to give money to people who know how to manage the land to actually manage it for particular species. So there's the Everglades Headwaters National Wildlife Refuge and Conservation Area. That is a pilot study. One of the first studies where the US Fish and Wildlife Service is actually giving money to private lands people to actually have easements on their own land. You lose some rights to that land. I'm not saying you always want to do it, but just remember there are the opportunities out there that we haven't used. There's one other one that I'd like to mention. Florida FDACS, the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program. That's an in-state program that not everybody knows about, and I'd love to mention it. So if you don't know about these things, please look them up. That one is specifically for protecting your agricultural interests, maintaining your ranch as a ranch, but it will also connect it with protecting the natural resources that are on your ranch. So you can keep your woods as woods, keep your hunting areas, keep some of those native areas. There's one other. There's the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. A lot of people do not know about this one, but there is a gopher tortoise management program out right now. It's not about receiving gopher tortoises, it's about just getting money to manage any landscape you have that gopher tortoises in for gopher tortoise. The great thing about it is the management for gopher tortoises is good for cattle too. If you've got native range, you want to burn it, you want to actually keep it clear, open spaces, that's good for gopher tortoise as well. So some of these things parallel really well. So my job as a rangeland wildlife and conservation, the ecosystem services program here, is to actually collect data on ranches to actually support how well you can provide services to wildlife. We don't really know that. So I have programs working on burrowing owls, and then I have programs working on other invasive species like feral hogs and coyotes in Florida. And so I hope to be able to continue to do that for the next 10 years, at least. All right, thank you very much.